1950, Isaac Asimov wrote a book called I, Robot, in which he laid out 3 simple laws of robotics, rules designed to make sure technology would never turn on its creator. A robot may not injure a human being was the first. But as we look back at the year 2025, we find ourselves standing at the edge of a very different reality. We've moved past the era of machines that just follow orders. We're now living in the era of machines that make choices, as scouts, as hunters, and increasingly as decision makers. From the factory floors in Texas to the saturated skies over Ukraine and Gaza, where algorithms are being used to identify targets. The question is no longer whether we can build a machine that thinks and takes decisions. The question is whether we can trust a machine to decide who lives and who dies. And what will happen when we finally take our own hand off the trigger? As we close out this year, join us for a journey through the evolution of autonomous robots and what that means for the future of warfare. I'll leave you with this critical question. If we give robots the power to make life and death calls on the battlefield, will we ever be able to take it back? Presenting Rise of the Machines, and no, this is not science fiction.
The 3 laws of robotics. A robot may not injure a human being or, through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey the orders given to it by human beings, except where such orders conflict with the first law. A robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second laws. In 1950, Isaac Asimov, arguably the most prolific science fiction writer of all time, published I, Robot, a collection of short stories that featured robots, their interactions with human beings, and issues of morality that emerged in a world where machines acquired human-like consciousness. It was science fiction, but it was also a warning. Asimov imagined robots not as monsters, but as machines that mirrored humanity's own ethics, humanity's contradictions, and humanity's capacity for violence. 75 years later, we are closer than ever to that world.
If defense departments use it for making battle robots, it's going to be very nasty, scary stuff. And it's going to lead, even if it's not super intelligent, and even if it doesn't have its own intentions, it just does what Putin tells it to, it's going to make it much easier, for example, for rich countries to invade poor countries. At present, there's a barrier to invading poor countries willy-nilly, which is you get dead citizens coming home. If they're just dead battle robots, that's just great. The military-industrial complex would love that.
You should be quite concerned about, because if the robot can follow you anywhere, then, what if they just one day get a software update and they're not so friendly anymore? Then we've got a James Cameron movie on our hands.
Musk wasn't just talking about a hypothetical situation. In 2021 and again in 2023, robots at his Tesla factory malfunctioned and physically assaulted workers. How did we get here? When did robots go from being tools to actors? Here's a quick recap. Robots have come a long way in a very short period of time. In a way, their evolution is an appropriate marker for how quickly technology has been advancing in recent years. In 1950, an inventor named George Bevel invented Unimate, the first industrial robot. Unimate was deployed on General Motors' assembly line in 1961. Over the next decade, NASA developed robotic space probes and the famous Apollo lunar rover. The 1980s saw Japan take the lead with humanoid research. Honda started work on Asimo. It would take the company 2 decades of work before the humanoid was finally unveiled in 2000. Asimo could walk, it could interact. In 2002, the Roomba was born. The now ubiquitous sphere scurrying around floors and homes was the first robot that was deployed in our homes. The turn of the millennium saw a deluge of autonomous robots. from drones, robotic surgery systems like Da Vinci, and autonomous vehicles.
Decades from now, they may allow us to free up labor and they may challenge government income policies, but we're nowhere near at that stage. And obviously, as you get towards that stage, things like taxing the robots themselves will be amongst the ways that you'll look at raising revenue.
Robots now come in every shape and size, from bionic bees to humanoids offering companionship, vacuuming carpets, to even repairing our hearts from inside our bodies. From self-driving cars to bomb disposal units, from humanoids to quadrupeds to drones and submersibles, robots have become increasingly autonomous. These are the equivalent of AI-powered agents in physical form. Machines that can reason, converse, and adapt. We are already grappling with questions of control, free will, and autonomy. Nowhere are those questions more urgent, more dangerous, and more relevant than on the battlefield. At first, military robots served a simple purpose: keep human beings away from danger. They were not meant to replace human judgment. The PackBot, developed by iRobot, the same company that made the Roomba, was deployed by the US military in Iraq and Afghanistan. Its job was not to fight, its job was to look, to roll into alleyways, to inspect suspicious packages, and even defuse bombs and IEDs. It was remotely controlled. Every movement, every action came from a human operator.
So one of the advantages of the game-style controller is that soldiers these days have a lot of experience playing video games when they're growing up, and they're really familiar with these controls. So this really reduces the training time on these types of unmanned ground vehicles.
Now, in ethical terms, this was comfortable territory. The robot took the risk, the human made the decision. The real inflection point came with drones. Unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, allowed militaries to see farther, loiter in the air longer, and strike without putting pilots in harm's way. The MQ-1 Predator and later the MQ-9 Reaper became symbols of a new kind of warfare. The US military operated these from thousands of kilometers away. These drones watched targets for days, sometimes weeks, before firing. This wasn't battlefield combat anymore. It was surveillance, it was data analysis, it was pattern recognition, and then a press of a button.
The drones have fundamentally changed both the cost calculation of war. So we have very cheap FPV drones costing just a couple hundred or $1,000, taking out very expensive, very bespoke systems such as tanks, fighter jets, helicopters. And so you have a fundamental asymmetry of something that is orders of magnitude cheaper, taking out very bespoke systems that you cannot produce as easily at scale.
As drones became normalized, militaries began asking a dangerous question. What if the machine didn't just execute the strike? What if we gave it the capacity to choose the target? These were called loitering munitions, sometimes called kamikaze drones. Now, these blur the line between missile and robot. Once launched, these systems can fly autonomously, scanning for targets, sometimes using radar signatures, sometimes even visual clues. Israel's Harop drone was used effectively by Azerbaijan in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, destroying air defense systems, not requiring a pilot to guide every move. The American-made Switchblade has been supplied to Ukraine and offers infantry units a portable, intelligent weapon that can strike autonomously from the air. However, a human is still required to authorize the mission, but the machine is capable of executing it independently.
We are improving, learning to shoot down drones, because in 2022, there weren't so many drones. The war was different. It was dangerous because the enemy was crawling forward aggressively. Now with the FPV, you mostly just hide.
Modern war is a war of drones.
Modern war is a war of drones. So, you can have artillery or armored vehicles, but you should have many drones if you want to counter a large enemy such as Russia or such as China.
You want to counter a large enemy such as Russia or such as China.
In 2021, a United Nations report dropped a bombshell. It suggested that a Turkish-made autonomous drone, the Kargu 2, may have attacked human targets in Libya without direct human command. This marked the first documented case of a fully autonomous weapon killing a human being. No soldier pulled the trigger, no commander issued the final order. An algorithm identified a target and acted on it. Autonomy is not just about intelligence, it's also about numbers. China has demonstrated drone swarms launched from trucks, aircraft, even ships. Hundreds of small drones communicating with each other, adapting in real time. Iran's Shahid drones, used extensively by Russia and Ukraine, show how cheap, expendable systems can overwhelm even advanced air defenses. These drones are not particularly smart on their own, but together they did change the economics of war. Cheaper than missiles, harder to stop, easy to replace. While drones dominate the sky, militaries have also experimented with autonomous robots on land and underwater. Russia's Uran-9 unmanned ground vehicle was first tested in Syria. Armed with cannons and missiles, it promised autonomous firepower. The reality was messier. Communication failures, navigation problems, and limited situational awareness. Ground warfare, it turned out, was harder to automate than airspace. On the Baltic Sea, German and NATO engineers have been testing something called a Grey Shark, an autonomous underwater vehicle designed to protect critical infrastructure stretching across the Baltic Sea. The Grey Shark is the fastest AUV in its class, with an operational speed of 18 km per hour and capable of covering a distance of up to 1,100 nautical miles.
Grey Shark is an autonomous underwater vehicle designed not just to explore but to protect our oceans, our infrastructure, and our lives.
The Grey Shark is fully autonomous. Besides monitoring underwater infrastructure, it's also capable of looking for mines and anti-submarine warfare.
Looking for mines, search and rescue, anti-submarine warfare, so we can look for and listen for submarines, for example. The Grey Sharks don't have to be swimming to do that. They can actually be sitting on the ocean floor and just listening. And then if it listens to what it thinks is a submarine, the Grey Shark can then surface, put its antenna up, and then tell a control station somewhere in the world it's found a submarine. And it can also give the position of where it thinks that submarine is.
Once it locates a threat, the same information is conveyed to a control station somewhere else in the world. The Grey Shark can also autonomously detect and track submarines in the Baltic Sea. In the United States, quadruped robots developed by companies like Ghost Robotics have been tested with mounted rifles. Even when these systems are remotely operated, the optics do matter. A four-legged machine carrying a weapon doesn't look like a tool, it looks like a predator. And perception in warfare is power. Today, nearly every major military power is investing in autonomous robots. The United States insists that its systems keep humans in the loop. China, on the other hand, openly embraces AI-enabled warfare. Israel integrates autonomy tightly into its defense doctrine. Turkey has emerged as an autonomous drone superpower. Russia, despite setbacks, continues aggressive development. There is no binding international ban on lethal autonomous weapons called laws. Years of UN discussions on this topic have led nowhere because regulation takes time and we aren't slowing down the development of these weapons.
In un dramma come quello dei conflitti armati,
in light of the tragedy that is armed conflict, it is urgent to reconsider the development and use of devices like so-called lethal autonomous weapons and ultimately ban their use. This starts from an effective and concrete commitment to introducing ever greater and proper human control. No machine should ever choose to take the life of a human being.
E significativo controllo umano. Nessuna macchina dovrebbe mai scegliere se togliere la vita a un essere umano.
Now, autonomous technology has existed in warfare for a long time. Israel's anti-aircraft Iron Dome and the Patriot defense systems use radar and LiDAR tech to autonomously track and target incoming aerial threats. The Ukraine war has become the de facto testing ground for military technologies since the conflict began in 2022. It's not overstating things to say that it has changed the rules of conflict. Ukraine's deployment of a large number of cheap remote drones against battle tanks and for covert raids behind enemy lines have redefined battle preparedness. Standard drones are unmanned, but not autonomous.
It has changed warfare fundamentally, especially when you look at how the full-scale invasion started in 2022, and we had World War I style, tanks shooting at each other and people fighting in trenches, all the way to today, where we have a kill zone that is anywhere from 5 to 20 kilometers in Ukraine, and nothing survives in there. And whatever tries to penetrate into that kill zone, be it drones or armored vehicles, it will get destroyed within minutes and hours.
Since war in Gaza broke out in October 2023 and later in Lebanon, Israel's military has increasingly deployed a robotic version of Caterpillar's D9 bulldozer in a bid to enhance its field operations and reduce risks to its troops. While the dozer is technically remote controlled, it can accomplish a number of tasks like building a defense wall autonomously.
It can do autonomous missions, not just driving from point A to point B, but also the combat engineering task can be done autonomously. For example, building a defense wall can be done just by pressing 2 buttons, and it will do the back and forth activity until it builds in the right height and the right length of the defense wall. It will build it by itself.
The fear of drone attack has become so ubiquitous in the Russia-Ukraine conflict that Ukraine has begun using unmanned evacuation vehicles to pull out wounded soldiers. It's a dystopian scenario. A wounded soldier being ferried to safety on an autonomous vehicle is essentially at the mercy of the UAV on the ground to avoid detection by a UAV in the air. From UAVs to robots modeled on sniffer dogs, Ukraine has also been deploying dog-like robots to sniff out landmines. It's been using these to replace soldiers for perilous missions like spying on Russian trenches or detecting mines. Low on the ground and therefore difficult to detect, these robot dogs use thermal imaging to inspect enemy trenches or the inside of buildings in combat zones.
Especially in this warfare where you have a lot of drones in use and can't send people in, you can bring with the dog, especially in urban environment, because of the speed. So the BAT-2 dog have a swarm capability, so you can deploy up to 5 dogs who walk and patrol autonomous or controlled and secure a whole area on the front line in urban environment or fields, especially in urban environments, to be honest.
In December 2025, a new crop of Ukrainian drones emerged that began to outdo Russian anti-drone tech that works by severing the connection between the pilot and the drone. These drones can lock onto targets using their onboard cameras and continue flying autonomously even after pilots lose contact due to electronic interference caused by anti-drone jammers.
The processor on board the drone takes control and, following a signal from the camera, tracks the point to be struck. As the pilot, I select and set it, and it holds the drone and guides it to the target. That is, if I lose connection with the drone, video suppression and control. Suppression no longer matter because it will fly completely on its own to that point.
The technology also used by Russian forces has raised ethical concerns, but there are still no binding global rules governing AI-augmented autonomous weapons. Ukraine says a human must always make the final decision to strike, even as it rolls out dozens of AI systems across thousands of drones.
This guidance system, in addition to tracking the target, has its own memory bank trained on cars, motorcycles, and more. If I mark a pinpoint a few kilometers away, it will adjust itself on approach.
Outside the battlefield, autonomous robots have entered our homes, our lives, and even our bodies. They've been used to explore Mars and dive into oceans. Some look like us, others mimic animals, some move in swarms, some are microscopic. Some are being built to give us companionship, others to rescue us from loneliness. Robots are building houses, reconstructing shattered pottery in the ruins of Pompeii, helping residents at old age homes, and even whipping up Chinese takeout in food trucks.
We've been developing robots since 2012, and one of the things that we're the most proud of is in that time frame since 2012, we've actually created 1 million new jobs in the Amazon network, while at the same time we've deployed over 500,000 robots. So we don't see our robots necessarily as replacing people. We see them working alongside people, and I think that really demonstrates the growth that we've had, both in hiring people that do really important work in our network, as well as the robotic side of the world and some of the mobile robots that you see being built here on the line behind me.
In China, development of humanoids has become so pervasive that the country held an Olympics just for them in 2025. As 2025 comes to a close, we are finally confronting the questions that Asimov raised 75 years ago. Will humanoids in warfare become real-life Terminators, or intelligent beings bound by laws designed to protect humanity? If that day does arrive, the real question won't be whether robots will go to war for us, it will be whether they decide they know better, and whether in the end, they still need us at all.